Help. He's not my dad. The 7-year-old didn't speak. She signed. 3 hand gestures in a Buc-ee's parking lot, 47 feet from the man planning a fishing trip in 8 days, the kind children don't come back from. The only person who understood was a Hells Angels biker who'd learned sign language for the brother he couldn't save. In 11 minutes, Hank Patterson would mobilize 280 bikers and expose a network worth $287,000. This is June's story, and it starts with 3 silent words to the one stranger who could hear them. If you believe every child deserves someone who listens when they can't scream, subscribe right now, drop your city in the comments, and stay with me. Because what Hank Patterson did with those 3 signed words didn't just save June. It stopped a pattern that had already killed once and was 8 days from killing again. Now let me tell you how a man with a prosthetic hand and a dead brother's ghost became the answer to a 7-year-old's silent prayer. The yellow windbreaker was the first thing Hank noticed, bright against the gray concrete and chrome, too large on a frame that looked too small even for 7 years old. The hood was up, despite the warm afternoon. When the small figure moved, shuffle scrape, shuffle scrape, that distinctive sound of someone taught to walk quietly. The sleeves hung past the hands, covering what Hank's trained eye already knew would be there. Marks, evidence, the things adults get good at ignoring. Hank Patterson had been kneeling beside his Road King for maybe 90 seconds when he saw her, checking tire pressure, not looking for anything except the next 200 miles home to Fredericksburg. His prosthetic left hand steadied the bike while his right worked the pressure gauge, a practiced motion after 8 years of learning to do everything one-handed, then relearning it when the carbon fiber fingers gave him back what the motorcycle accident had taken. He didn't hear her approach. That should have been the first warning. A 7-year-old moving through a crowded parking lot makes noise, the skip step of childhood energy, the chatter of questions, the presence that demands attention. This child moved like a ghost, like someone who'd learned that being noticed meant being hurt. Hank glanced up. Hazel green eyes stared at him from under that yellow hood. Enormous eyes in a face too thin, hollow cheeks showing malnutrition that no amount of loose clothing could hide. A small scar above the right eyebrow. A split lip on the bottom right side, scabbed over but recent. And behind the left ear, where the hood didn't quite cover, purple-yellow bruising, the kind that comes from being grabbed by the head. The child stood perfectly still, 3 feet away, shoulders hunched forward, arms wrapped around her torso, head tilted slightly to the right, the posture of someone compensating for hearing loss on the left side. Hank had seen that tilt before, on his brother Marcus, on the kid who'd spent 41 years in a world that got quieter every day until the silence became unbearable, and Marcus decided he couldn't fight it anymore. The girl's hands came up slowly, deliberately. 3 signs, clear, precise, the movements of someone who knew exactly what they were saying and to whom. Help, fist on palm, lifted upward, the universal sign, the one even people who didn't know ASL could sometimes recognize. He's not, negation shake, the subtle head movement that turned statement into opposite. My dad, tap forehead, male, then chest, possessive. Her hands dropped. She stared at Hank, waiting. The desperation in those eyes was so raw, it hit him like a physical blow. Hank's head snapped up fully. His whole body went rigid, not threatening, but alert, every instinct from 20 years in the Marines, 11 years in the Angels, 30 years of learning to read danger the way other people read newspapers. All of it screaming that this moment mattered in ways he couldn't see yet. His prosthetic hand dropped from the bike. The mechanical whir as the fingers spread was barely audible over the parking lot noise. But the girl flinched. Didn't run, just flinched, then held her ground. That told Hank more than the signs had. This was a child who'd been hurt enough to flinch at small sounds, but was desperate enough to stay anyway. Desperate enough to approach a 6'2" stranger in a Hell's Angels vest, in full view of whoever she was running from, because she'd run out of options, and this was her last play. Hank stayed kneeling. Didn't stand. Would make him too tall, too intimidating. He set down the tire pressure gauge, opened both hands, palms up. Universal sign, I'm not a threat. Then he signed back, slow and clear, so she could read every movement. I see you. I understand. You're safe now. The girl's eyes went wide. Her hands came up again, faster this time, the movements shaking but urgent. He took me. My real dad is dead. This man is bad. She glanced over her shoulder. 47 feet away, a man stood at pump 14 with his back turned. Average height, average build. Pressed khakis and a blue polo shirt. The kind of clean-cut, normal-looking guy who blended into any crowd. He was swiping a credit card at the pump. Back to the girl for maybe 6 more seconds. Hank signed, "What's his name?" But he also spoke out loud, keeping his voice calm and steady. Hey there, sweetheart. You doing okay? The duality was tactical. If the man turned around, he'd see a biker making conversation with a kid. Nothing suspicious. But the girl would know Hank understood the real conversation happening in silence. Doug, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, slurred slightly on the G sound, speech affected by hearing loss. Douglas Finch. He works for the county. Everyone thinks he's nice. He's not nice. How long? Hank's hands asked the question his voice couldn't without drawing attention. The girl's fingers formed the number slowly. 1, 3. Then she signed. Months. He hurts me. She pointed to her left ear. I can't hear. Then she touched her ear again, more specifically. He made it stop working. Hank's jaw tightened. His prosthetic hand clenched involuntarily, the mechanical sound louder this time. He forced the fingers to relax, forced his face to stay calm, even as rage started building behind his eyes. 13 months. This 7-year-old had been in hell for 13 months while the world went about its Saturday shopping and gas station stops and spring break plans. The man at pump 14 finished swiping his card. Started to turn. Your dad nearby, honey? Hank said out loud, loading the word dad with just enough weight that anyone listening carefully would hear the quotation marks. I'd like to meet him. The girl nodded, played along. But her hands kept signing. Frantic now, the movements almost too fast to read. He killed another kid before me. He's going to kill me too. Fishing trip in 8 days. Drown me. Take the money. Please, please, please. Then out loud, barely a whisper. I heard him on the phone. He said same as the Matheson kid. He said let nature take its course. Please, I don't want to die. And then she signed one more thing. The thing that broke something in Hank's chest that hadn't broken even when Marcus's casket was lowered into Texas soil 7 years ago. My real daddy would want you to save me. For exactly 3 seconds, Hank Patterson, former Marine Corps gunnery sergeant, Hell's Angels sergeant-at-arms, a man who'd seen combat in places most people couldn't find on a map, couldn't breathe. He thought of Marcus, of the little brother who'd learned to sign I love you when he was 3 years old, who'd never heard Hank's voice but had always understood his heart, of the suicide note that had been found on Marcus's desk, written in perfect penmanship. I'm tired of being invisible. This 7-year-old girl in a yellow windbreaker was signing to him in a parking lot because she knew he'd understand. Because somehow, in her desperation, she'd seen what most people missed. The tattoo on Hank's right forearm with Marcus's name and dates. The way Hank's hands moved when he thought no one was watching. the grief that every Marine learns to carry in silence. She'd seen him, really seen him, and she'd taken the biggest risk of her short life, betting that he would see her back. Hank stood up slowly, deliberately, 6'2" of muscle and leather and barely controlled fury. He put his prosthetic hand on June's shoulder, gently, carefully. The carbon fiber was warm from the Texas sun. "Listen to me, June." His voice was gravel and iron. "I don't know your real daddy, but I know what a good man would want. And he'd want you alive. You're not going on any fishing trip. You're not going anywhere with that man. Do you understand me? I'm calling my brothers right now. Every single one of them. And we're going to make sure you never see that man again, except through courtroom glass." He signed, "You are safe. I promise on my brother's grave. No one will hurt you again." Then he did something that would later be described in police reports, news articles, and 3 separate legal briefs. He took off his sergeant-at-arms rocker from his vest, the small patch that sat below the main Hells Angels insignia, the symbol of his authority to protect the chapter and everyone under its shield. He folded it carefully and tucked it into the pocket of June's yellow windbreaker. "That's my word," Hank said. "That patch means I protect people. And right now, that means you. Keep it. When this is over, you can give it back. But while you're holding it, you're under Hell's Angels protection. Nobody touches you. Nobody." He pulled out his phone. June saw the screen. War Chief, President. Hank didn't look away from her as the phone rang. His brown eyes, crow's feet from decades of squinting into sun and wind, the kind of weathered kindness that only comes from surviving loss, stayed locked on this small girl who'd just bet her life that a stranger in a parking lot would be the one person who finally listened. The phone clicked. "Yeah, Ironside. What's up?" Hank's voice stayed calm, military calm, the kind of controlled urgency that made people stop whatever they were doing and pay attention. "War Chief, it's Hank. I need every brother within 100 miles at Buc-ee's on I-10, Selma exit, now." Pause. "What's going on?" "Child trafficking situation. Victim is 7 years old. Signed for help in ASL. Perpetrator is still on site. We need full show of force. Cameras, witnesses, anyone who knows family law. This goes federal." Another pause. Hank could hear Ruben Torres, 58 years old, did 11 years in Huntsville for defending a woman from her abuser, came out with a paralegal certificate and a mission, processing the information. "How many we talking?" "I need enough bikers to surround this parking lot so tight a cockroach couldn't leave without us knowing. I need the kind of presence that makes this bastard understand he's not leaving here except in handcuffs." Hank heard paper rustling. Ruben was already pulling the call list. "I can get you 280. 3 chapters. Hill Country, San Antonio Metro, Austin. Might take 20 minutes for the Austin boys." Hank smiled, cold and dangerous. "Perfect. Tell them to bring the noise." The line went dead. Hank looked at June. Then he looked past her, 47 feet to where Douglas Finch was replacing the gas cap on his 2004 Chevy Silverado. Khakis, polo shirt, clean sneakers, reading glasses on a chain, the face of a helpful county employee, a volunteer, a good neighbor, a predator who'd already killed 1 child and was 8 days from killing another. "June," Hank said quietly, signing as he spoke. "In about 15 minutes, this parking lot is going to get very loud. Motorcycles. A lot of them. I need you to stay close to me. Don't run. Don't hide. Just stay where I can see you. Can you do that?" June nodded. Her small hand found the patch in her pocket, held it like a talisman. 47 feet away, Douglas Finch closed his truck's fuel door and started walking toward them. Now you might be thinking, this is where the violence starts, where 280 bikers roar in and fists start flying, and everything descends into the kind of chaos that makes good television, but terrible justice. That's not what happened. Because what June didn't know yet, what Douglas Finch was about to learn the hard way, was that the Hells Angels Texas Hill Country chapter hadn't survived 11 years of federal scrutiny and community suspicion by being the stereotype everyone expected. They'd survived by being smarter, more patient, more disciplined than the system designed to stop them. And they were about to prove that real power isn't about who can hit hardest. It's about who can stay calm long enough to build a case so airtight that even the most corrupt system in the world can't ignore it. Douglas Finch approached with a smile, the kind of warm, slightly concerned smile that had worked on pediatricians, social workers, librarians, and police officers for 13 months. "Hey there, sweetie." His voice was cheerful, patient, the disappointed parent tone that suggested June was being difficult again. "I thought I told you to wait by the truck. You know better than to bother strangers." He looked at Hank with an apologetic expression. The universal parent-to-stranger communication. "Kids, am I right?" "Sorry about that," Doug said, reaching for June's shoulder. "She's been having a rough time since her daddy passed. Acts out sometimes. Doesn't know how to process the grief. We're working on it." June flinched away from his hand. The movement was subtle. Most people wouldn't have noticed. But Hank noticed. He noticed the way her breathing changed, the way her left hand clutched that patch in her pocket harder, the way she tilted her head right, putting her good ear toward Hank and her damaged ear toward Doug. She was positioning for protection, for witness. For the moment Doug's mask slipped and someone finally saw what was underneath. Hank stayed kneeling, didn't stand up, didn't create confrontation, just stayed at eye level with June and kept his voice friendly. "No problem at all. We were just talking about motorcycles. She was asking about my bike." He glanced at June, signed subtly, low and fast where Doug couldn't see. "Stay calm. Brother's coming. Be brave, 2 more minutes." "That right, June?" Doug's voice had an edge now. Not obvious, just enough that someone who lived with him would recognize the warning. "You asking about motorcycles? Since when are you interested in motorcycles?" June's voice came out small but steady. "Since now." Doug's smile tightened. "Well, we should get going. Long drive home, and you've got homework to finish before dinner." He reached for her again. Hank stood up this time. Slowly, all 6'2" of him unfolding to full height, the Hells Angels patches catching afternoon light. His prosthetic hand made that mechanical whir as the fingers adjusted grip. "Actually," Hank said, voice still friendly but with iron underneath, "I was hoping to chat with you for a minute. About June's interest in motorcycles. See, my club does this thing every year. Toy drive for kids in foster care. Raises about $28,000 annually. I'm wondering if June might want to participate. Help us pick out toys for other kids her age." It was a test, a trap, and Doug knew it, because any normal guardian would say yes, would see a community outreach opportunity, a chance for their traumatized foster child to help others, to feel empowered. But Doug wasn't normal, and he couldn't say yes, because saying yes meant letting June interact with people who might ask questions, people who might notice things, people who might actually listen when a 7-year-old said something was wrong. "That's real kind of you," Doug said, smile still in place but eyes going cold. "But June's got a lot on her plate right now. Therapy, catching up on schoolwork, adjusting to the new living situation. I think it's best we keep things simple for a while, but I appreciate the offer." "She doesn't go to school," Hank said. Not a question, a statement. Doug's expression shifted. "Homeschooled. It's better for her right now, with the trauma and all. And the therapy? Twice a week. Very helpful." Doug's hand found June's shoulder again. This time he held on, fingers pressing just hard enough to send a message. "We really should be going." Hank's phone buzzed. Text from War Chief. "First wave 8 minutes out. Stitch is 4 minutes. Badge is 6. Hank looked at Doug. Really looked at him. At the pressed khakis and the clean sneakers and the reading glasses on a chain. At the wedding ring that police would later discover belonged to a woman who'd divorced Doug 7 years ago, but whose ring he still wore because it made him look stable, trustworthy, committed. At the county ID badge clipped to his belt. Department of Child and Family Services, Records Division, that gave him access to every orphan, every death certificate, every vulnerable child in the system. At the hands pressing into June's shoulder, holding her like property. 8 minutes, Hank said out loud. Doug frowned. "Excuse me?" "I said 8 minutes. That's how long you've got before things get complicated for you." Doug's smile vanished completely. "I don't know what this girl told you, but she's got a history of lying, making up stories for attention. It's part of her behavioral issues. Now, if you'll excuse us." "She didn't tell me anything." Hank's voice was cold now. No more friendly biker making small talk. This was the voice that had commanded Marines in combat. She signed, in American Sign Language, 3 words, and those 3 words told me everything I needed to know about who you are and what you've been doing to her for 13 months. Doug went pale. I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Because you researched her real father before you took her. Navy veteran, dead in a motorcycle accident, single dad who'd been raising her alone. No extended family. No mother in the picture. The perfect target, isolated, vulnerable. Worth $1,247 a month in Social Security survivor benefits that you've been collecting for 13 months while spending exactly $0 on this child's care." Doug's hand dropped from June's shoulder. "You're insane. I'm calling the police." "Please do." Hank smiled. Not friendly, not warm. The smile of a man who'd already won and was just waiting for his opponent to figure it out. "In fact, I already did. Called my chapter president. He's calling the Bexar County Sheriff, and the FBI, and Child Protective Services, and every news station between here and Austin, because in about 6 minutes, this parking lot is going to have 280 Hells Angels bikers, 40 cars full of witnesses with cameras, and enough documentation to bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again." The distant sound started then. Low, barely audible over the parking lot noise. Thunder on the horizon. The rumble of motorcycles. A lot of motorcycles. Getting closer. Doug heard it. His face went from pale to white. "This is harassment," he said, voice shaking now. "I'll sue. You'll run," Hank said quietly, "because that's what predators do when the pack surrounds them. But here's the thing, Doug. You're in a Buc-ee's parking lot, biggest travel center in Texas. Security cameras covering every angle. 200 witnesses, 3 exits, all of which will have brothers standing at them in about 4 minutes. You can try to leave, but you won't make it past pump 12 before someone stops you." The rumble grew louder. 50 motorcycles, 100, more coming. June looked up at Hank, signed, "They're really coming." "For me." Hank signed back, "For you, always for kids like you. Never alone again." The first wave of bikes appeared on the horizon. 4 Harley-Davidsons, riding in tight formation, chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. The sound of their engines, that distinctive Harley rumble, made every head in the parking lot turn. Then 20 more appeared. Then 50. Then 100. The Buc-ee's parking lot at 2:43 p.m. on a Saturday in March became something nobody there would ever forget. 280 Hells Angels bikers, riding in from 3 chapters across Texas, descending on a gas station because one 7-year-old girl had signed 3 words to the right stranger, and Douglas Wendell Finch, county records clerk and child killer, stood in the middle of it all and understood, perhaps for the first time in his carefully constructed life of exploitation, that he'd made a fatal miscalculation. He'd hurt a child who'd learned sign language from her real father. A child who'd had a best friend named Rosie, who was deaf. A child who'd kept that knowledge quiet for 13 months, waiting for the moment when it might save her life. And he'd done it 47 feet from a man who'd spent 30 years signing to a brother the world had failed. Sometimes divine justice doesn't look like angels with wings. Sometimes it looks like 280 leather-clad bikers on Harleys surrounding a parking lot, and a 7-year-old girl finally being seen. The noise was deafening, beautiful, a wall of sound and chrome and controlled fury that said one thing louder than words ever could: nobody hurts this child again. The formation pulled in like a military operation, not chaos, not a mob. A coordinated deployment of men who'd ridden together for years and understood that discipline was more powerful than rage and furor. The first 4 bikes, led by Reuben War Chief Torres on a matte black road glide, entered from the north entrance and swept the perimeter. They didn't park, just rolled slowly past every exit, every camera angle, every potential escape route, mapping the terrain the way soldiers map a battlefield before engagement. The second wave came 60 seconds later. 20 bikes, riding 2 by 2, engines synchronized so perfectly they sounded like one massive heartbeat. They parked in formation along the western edge of the lot, facing inward, creating the first wall. Kickstands down, almost in unison. Engines cutting to idle, then to silence. 20 men dismounted, leather vests bearing identical patches. Hell's Angels, San Antonio Metro, Texas. They didn't shout, didn't rush, just stood beside their bikes, arms crossed, eyes scanning. The third wave was the largest. 80 bikes from 3 directions at once, north, south, west, converging with the precision of a parade formation. The rumble shook windows, set off 3 car alarms, made every person in that parking lot stop what they were doing and stare. Parents pulled children closer. Store employees came outside. The Buck E's manager stood in the doorway with a phone to his ear, probably calling corporate, probably wondering if this was the beginning of a riot. But no one was rioting. The bikes parked in neat rows. Engines died in sequence. 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 at a time, until the deafening roar faded to silence so sudden it felt heavy, expectant. 280 Hells Angels bikers stood in the Buck E's parking lot on a Saturday afternoon in March, not moving, not shouting, simply present, a wall of leather and chrome between June Marigold Hartley and the man who'd been planning to drown her in 8 days, and Douglas Finch, county records clerk, volunteer fire department auxiliary member, Little League equipment manager, the man who'd built a reputation as a patient guardian dealing with a traumatized child, stood 47 feet from his truck and realized he'd walked into something he couldn't talk his way out of. Hank kept his hand on June's shoulder, gentle but firm. The patch in her pocket, his sergeant-at-arms rocker, was a physical promise, but this was the visible one. 280 brothers who'd dropped everything because one girl had signed 3 words. War Chief approached first. 58 years old, walked with the slight limp from the knee injury that had ended his days throwing punches, but started his days reading law books. Gray beard braided down to his chest, eyes that had seen the inside of Huntsville prison, and came out harder, but wiser. He stopped beside Hank, looked at June. His expression softened in a way that only men who've lost can soften, recognizing in this small girl every person the system had failed, including himself once upon a time. "This her?" War Chief's voice was quiet. "June Marigold Hartley," Hank said. 7 years old, 13 months in the custody of Douglas Finch, county employee standing over there trying to decide if he runs or bluffs. War Chief looked at Doug, studied him for exactly 3 seconds, then looked back at Hank. What do we know? She signed, said he's not her father. Real father died 13 months ago. Navy veteran, motorcycle accident. Doug took custody claiming to be Dad's service buddy. Forged the paperwork through his county access. Been collecting Social Security survivor benefits, $12.47 per month. She's got progressive hearing loss from repeated head trauma. Rope burns on her wrists, split lip, bruising behind her left ear. He's systematically destroying her hearing to file disability claims for higher payout. Same pattern as another kid. Another kid? Liam Christopher Matheson, 11 years old. Died 4 years ago in Doug's care. Official cause: bacterial meningitis from untreated ear infection. Insurance paid out $47,000. She overheard him on the phone talking about it. Same as the Matheson kid. He's planning a fishing trip in 8 days. War Chief's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, typed something. 3 seconds later, 2 men detached from the formation and headed toward the Buke Ease entrance. Stitch is getting medical documentation started, War Chief said. Badge is calling this unofficial. What do you need? Hank looked at the parking lot. 280 witnesses, 50 phone cameras already recording. This wasn't going to be he said, she said. This was going to be documented from 40 angles with timestamps and GPS coordinates. I need someone watching every exit. I need witnesses canvassed. Anyone who's seen them here before, anyone who saw him yell at her, anyone who noticed and didn't act. I need financials pulled if we can get them. And I need that little girl to never have to be alone with him again, even for the 30 seconds it takes police to arrive. Consider it done. War Chief raised his hand. Didn't shout, just lifted his hand. Every brother in that parking lot saw it. 4 men headed to the exits. 6 more fanned out through the crowd, with phones out, starting to ask questions. 3 approached the Buke Ease manager, who looked terrified, until one of them, a brother called Spector, former CPS investigator who'd quit in disgust after 8 years, showed him something on his phone, and the manager's expression changed from fear to understanding. This wasn't a gang descending. This was a rescue operation with military precision, and Douglas Finch watched it happen with the growing realization that his usual playbook, charm, misdirection, legal threat, wasn't going to work here. A younger brother, maybe 37, lean build, phone in hand, approached Hank. Diesel, he said by way of introduction. I'm live streaming to our lawyer partner. Everything from this point is recorded and time-stamped. Unbreakable evidence chain. He looked at June. Smiled, the kind of warm smile that didn't match the tactical vest and leather. Hey, June, I'm going to film some things, okay? Not you. I won't point the camera at you unless you say it's okay. Just the area around us. The people talking. Making sure everything is documented. Is that all right? June nodded. Her voice was barely a whisper. Will it help? It'll make sure, Diesel said gently, that nobody can ever say, this didn't happen the way it happened. That you asked for help and got it. Doug finally moved, started walking toward them, hands up in a placating gesture. Listen, he said, voice shaking slightly. I don't know what kind of misunderstanding is happening here, but this is my foster daughter. I'm her legal guardian. I have the paperwork. Whatever she told you, she's been through trauma, she gets confused, Where's your paperwork? War Chief's voice cut through the explanation like a blade. Doug blinked. At home, obviously. I don't carry legal documents to a gas station. What agency placed her with you? Bexar County Child Protective Services. Name of your caseworker? Sandra. Sandra Oaks. War Chief typed on his phone, waited, looked up. Sandra Oaks hasn't worked for Bexar County CPS in 18 months. Quit after an internal investigation into falsified home visit reports. currently under review by the state licensing board. Doug's face went from white to gray. And according to the county foster database, which we're accessing right now through completely legal channels via a brother who works in family court, June Marigold Hartley was never officially placed in foster care. Her father died 13 months ago. She went into emergency custody for 8 weeks. Then she disappeared from the system entirely. No placement record, no guardian assignment, no follow-up visits, just gone. Every word landed like a stone. Someone filed forged guardianship papers, War Chief continued, voice level and cold. 11 days after her father's death. Someone with access to county systems and death certificates and orphan databases. Someone who knew exactly which children were vulnerable and which ones had no family to ask questions. Doug's hands dropped. I want a lawyer. That's your right. War Chief nodded. Police are 3 minutes out. FBI field office has been notified. Child trafficking across state lines triggers federal jurisdiction. You'll have access to counsel as soon as you're processed. But here's what's going to happen in the next 3 minutes. You're going to stand exactly where you are. You're not going to approach June. You're not going to get in your truck. You're not going to make any phone calls. Because if you try any of those things, 280 witnesses are going to document exactly what you did, and resisting lawful citizen's arrest becomes another charge on top of the felonies you're already facing. A man approached from the Bouc-Ease entrance. 49 years old, graying hair in a tight ponytail, wearing a leather vest with a medical crosspatch on the shoulder. He carried a small first aid kit and moved with the efficiency of someone who'd patched up wounded soldiers in places where the nearest hospital was a helicopter ride away. Stitch, he said to Hank. Combat medic, 8 years Army. I need to document June's injuries if she's okay with that. He knelt down to June's eye level. Didn't touch. Just made himself small and non-threatening. June, my name is Daniel, but everyone calls me Stitch. I used to be a medic in the Army. I'd like to take some photos of your injuries. Just photos. I won't touch you unless you say it's okay. The photos will help the police and the doctors understand what's been happening to you. Is that all right? June looked at Hank. He signed, He's safe. Medical helper. Your choice. June nodded. For the next 4 minutes, while police sirens grew louder in the distance, Stitch documented everything with the methodical precision of a military field medic creating evidence for court-martial proceedings. Photographs of the rope burns on both wrists, red and raw, consistent with prolonged restraint, close-ups of the split lip, the bruising behind the left ear, the scar above the eyebrow. Weight and height measurements showing severe malnutrition, 42 pounds at 3'9" when she should be 50 to 55 pounds. June, Stitch said gently, can you tell me about your ear? The left one? Does it hurt? I can't hear from it, June whispered. It used to hurt a lot. Now it's just quiet. How long? Since the last time he pushed me. 19 days ago. Stitch's jaw clenched. He made a note. Photographed the outer ear, documenting slight swelling consistent with inner ear trauma. We're going to get you to a doctor, he said. A real doctor who's going to make sure you get treatment, okay? Behind them, 3 Bexar County Sheriff's patrol cars pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. No sirens. The deputies had been briefed en route, understood they were arriving at a rescue operation, not a riot. 2 deputies approached. One older, maybe 55, nameplate reading M. Torres, same last name as War Chief, and with the same eyes. The other younger, hand near his weapon, but not on it, scanning the crowd of bikers with the wariness of someone who'd been taught to fear them. Reuben, the older deputy said. Not Mr. Torres, not Sir, just Reuben, the familiarity of family. Miguel, War Chief replied. Then to Hank and the others, my cousin, 30 years on the force. He's clean. Deputy Miguel Torres looked at June, looked at the photographs Stitch was still taking, looked at Doug standing 47 feet away, surrounded by brothers who hadn't moved or spoken, but whose presence created a wall he couldn't escape. "Someone want to tell me what we've got?" Hank handed him a small notebook. Inside, written in neat handwriting, the discipline of Marine Corps reports, was everything June had said. Every sign, every detail, names, dates, dollar amounts, the overheard conversation about Liam Matheson. Deputy Torres read it. His expression darkened with every line. "You got witnesses?" 280, War Chief said, plus 40 civilians with phone cameras, plus Bucky's security footage from 16 angles, plus medical documentation being compiled right now, plus financial records we're pulling through legal channels. This is the girl's statement. Signed in ASL, Hank said, which I speak fluently. 30 years learning it from my deaf brother. Every word she signed, I can testify to in court. Deputy Torres looked at his younger partner. "Call for another unit." And called Child Protective Services, actual CPS, not county records. "Tell them we need emergency protective custody and a victim advocate, now." The younger deputy moved away, speaking rapidly into his radio. Miguel Torres walked toward Doug, slow, deliberate. His hand rested on his service weapon now, not threatening, just ready. "Douglas Wendell Finch." Doug nodded, voice barely audible. "Yes. I'm detaining you for questioning in relation to allegations of child abuse, child endangerment, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent." The Miranda warnings rolled out in that familiar cadence every cop knows by heart. Doug stood perfectly still, didn't resist, didn't run, didn't even ask what this was about. That told Miguel Torres everything he needed to know. Guilty people run or fight. Guiltier people calculate. They know resisting makes it worse. They know the game is over, but they're already 3 moves ahead, thinking about lawyers and bail, and how to spin this. Douglas Finch had the expression of a man running calculations, still believing he could navigate this if he just stayed calm and played the victim card hard enough later. He had no idea what was about to unravel. Because June had signed 3 words to the right stranger, and those 3 words had just triggered the kind of investigation that county records clerks, even ones with system access and forged credentials, couldn't disappear from. An older brother, 63, gray beard down to his chest, eyes that had seen every kind of hell and come out the other side, approached June. He didn't kneel, just stood at a respectful distance and spoke in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. "I'm Gravel," he said. "Founded this chapter 41 years ago. I've got 7 grandkids, and every single one of them knows that if they're ever in trouble, they find a biker with this patch, and we'll move heaven and earth to help them." He looked at the crowd of brothers surrounding them. "These men came because you were brave enough to ask. Because you saw Hank's tattoo and took the biggest risk of your life betting he'd understand. You were right, and I want you to know something, June. From this moment forward, you're family, not because of blood, because you're one of ours now. Nobody hurts family." June's eyes filled with tears. She'd been holding them back for 4 minutes, maybe 4 months, maybe 13 months, but Gravel's words broke something. She cried, quietly, the way children cry when they've been punished for making noise. Shoulders shaking, face buried in Hank's leather vest. And 280 Hells Angels bikers stood in perfect silence and let a 7-year-old girl grieve for the childhood that had been stolen from her. 3 more vehicles arrived. An unmarked sedan, FBI field agent, later identified as Special Agent Victoria Chen, Crimes Against Children Division, a CPS van with emergency placement coordinator, and a news van from KSA T12, camera crew scrambling out before the manager could wave them away. Diesel intercepted the news crew, spoke quietly, pointed at June with her face hidden against Hank's vest. The camera operator nodded, lowered the lens, aimed it at the bikers instead. Getting the story, without exploiting the victim. The FBI agent approached Deputy Torres. They spoke briefly. She looked at the notebook, the photographs, the formation of bikers, made 3 phone calls in rapid succession. Then she walked to Hank. Special Agent Victoria Chen, FBI San Antonio Field Office. I'm told you have information relevant to an ongoing federal investigation. Her voice was neutral, professional, but there was exhaustion in her face, the kind that comes from working cases where children die while you're building the legally perfect evidence chain. How long has your office known about Douglas Finch? Hank asked. It wasn't confrontational, just honest. Agent Chen's expression tightened. We've had the Matheson case flagged as suspicious for 11 months. Built a financial forensics case linking foster care fraud patterns across 3 counties. We were 3 weeks from presenting to a grand jury. June's got 19 days, Hank said quietly, before her hearing is gone permanently. 8 days before he takes her on a fishing trip she doesn't come back from. You had 3 weeks. We got her out in 13 minutes. Agent Chen had no good response, because Hank was right. I'm not here to second-guess your methods, she said finally. I'm here because whatever evidence you've gathered, if it's authenticated, it closes gaps we haven't been able to fill for almost a year. War Chief stepped forward, handed her a tablet. Financial records for Douglas Finch, pulled through public databases and legal FOIA requests filed by our chapter's paralegal. $16,471 collected in Social Security survivor benefits over 13 months. $8,200 spent on a motorcycle down payment. $3,470 at sports betting sites. $2,910 at liquor stores. 0 spent on June's care, cross-referenced with grocery receipts showing food purchases for 1 adult. He swiped to the next screen. Insurance policy on June, $75,000, purchased 3 months ago and backdated to look routine. Previous policy on Liam Matheson, same amount, paid out $47,000 after his death. Pattern match on cause of death. Both children developed progressive hearing loss from accidents. Both denied medical treatment for infection. Both died within the same timeline window. Agent Chen reviewed the documents. Her professional mask slipped for just a second. Shock, then fury, then back to neutral. If this is authenticated, she said carefully, it establishes a clear pattern. Predatory targeting of orphaned children with no family support. Systematic medical neglect designed to maximize insurance payout and disability benefits. Financial motive in excess of $120,000 total across both victims. It's authenticated, War Chief said. Every document is time-stamped, source-verified, and backed up in 3 separate locations. Our lawyer partner has been reviewing in real time. It'll stand up in court. Agent Chen looked at the 280 bikers. At June, still crying into Hank's vest. At Douglas Finch being placed in the back of a patrol car, hands cuffed, head down. You understand, she said quietly, that by all official standards, what you just did was vigilante intervention in an active investigation. Yes, ma'am, Hank replied. And you understand that I should be explaining how this complicates our case, how proper channels exist for a reason, how civilian involvement creates legal exposure. Yes, ma'am. Agent Chen looked at June again. At the rope burns Stitch had documented. At the yellow windbreaker 2 sizes too large. At the small hand, still clutching a Hell's Angels patch like it was the only solid thing in a world that had tried to erase her. But I'm not going to say any of that, Agent Chen continued, because the truth is, June would be dead in 8 days if you'd waited for proper channels. And I've worked crimes against children long enough to know that sometimes the system needs buying time to work. You bought it. We'll take it from here. She handed Hank a business card. I'll need a full statement from June when she's ready. Not tonight. When she's been medically evaluated, had some sleep, has an advocate present. But when that happens, I want you there. You're the one she trusted. That matters. Hank took the card. Signed to June Obeys. FBI Oehudi is safe. She's going to help. I'll be with you when you talk to her. June looked up. Her face was wet with tears, eyes red, but for the first time in 13 months, she looked like a child who believed adults might actually keep their promises. A woman approached from the CPS van, mid-50s, kind face, carrying a stuffed animal, a dog, golden retriever, soft and new. June? Her voice was gentle. My name is Patricia. I work for Child Protective Services. The real ones, not the people who lost track of you. I'm here to make sure you're safe tonight, and every night after that. I brought you something. She held out the stuffed dog. June looked at Hank. He nodded. She took it carefully, like it might disappear. Is he really going to jail? June's voice was so small. Yes, Patricia said. The police are taking him now. He's going to be charged with very serious crimes. And you're never going to have to see him again unless you want to. And only in a courtroom, with lawyers and protection, and people who believe you. People believe me now? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back. Sweetheart, 280 people just drove here because one man believed you. Yes, people believe you. The patrol car with Douglas Finch pulled away, lights flashing. No sirens. Just steady forward motion toward booking, fingerprinting, the beginning of consequences that had been delayed for 13 months while systems failed and a 7-year-old girl learned to walk silently and count prime numbers to stay sane. The crowd of bikers hadn't moved, hadn't left, wouldn't leave until June was safe. And June stood in the center of them, surrounded by leather and chrome and men who looked like nightmares but acted like the answer to a prayer, and whispered the words she'd been waiting 13 months to say. Thank you. 280 voices answered as one. Always. 47 minutes after Douglas Finch was driven away from Buc-ee's, Special Agent Victoria Chen opened a file folder that June's photograph shouldn't have been in. She was standing in the clubhouse conference room, War Chief had called it, surrounded by 8 Hells Angels brothers, and enough evidence to build 3 different federal cases. The table was covered with printed documents, tablet screens showing financial spreadsheets, and a whiteboard someone had started mapping connections on. But it was the file folder that changed everything. The folder was labeled Matheson, Liam, Closed. Standard manila, paper-clipped stack maybe 40 pages thick. Agent Chen had requested it from county archives 2 hours ago, expecting basic case files on the 4-year-old death. What she found instead, tucked between the autopsy report and the insurance settlement documentation, was a photograph that didn't belong there. June, younger, maybe 6 years old, standing in what looked like a county office, holding a sign with a case number. The number didn't match Liam's case. It matched a completely different file, a file that technically didn't exist because the placement had never been officially recorded. Someone took an intake photo, Agent Chen said slowly, holding the image up for the brothers to see. When June first entered emergency custody, this photo should be in her case file. Instead, it's buried in a dead boy's closed investigation. Diesel, the tech-savvy brother, leaned forward. That's not an accident. Someone moved it deliberately. Someone with access to closed archives. Someone who wanted to track their targets, War Chief said, voice flat. Someone who kept trophies hidden where nobody would look, because nobody reviews closed cases. Agent Chen set down the folder, pulled out her phone, dialed. This is Chen. I need you to pull every closed child death case in Bexar County going back 7 years. Cross-reference for any files containing photographs or documents that don't match the primary case number. Flag any cases where the guardian received insurance payouts exceeding $30,000. And pull the access logs. I want to know everyone who's opened those files in the last decade. She listened for 10 seconds. Hung up. We're not looking at one predator, she said. We're looking at a filing system designed to hide them. The room went very quiet. Hank, sitting at the end of the table with arms crossed and jaw tight, spoke for the first time since they'd arrived at the clubhouse. How many? Won't know until we run the search, but if Douglas Finch had a system for selecting targets, tracking them, and burying evidence, he either built it himself or someone taught him. Either way, there are more victims, finished Badge. 54 years old, former Houston police detective who'd quit after 22 years when an internal investigation into evidence tampering went nowhere, and 3 guilty men walked free. He'd seen institutional rot before, knew how it smelled. He moved to the whiteboard, uncapped a marker. Let's map what we know. For the next 30 minutes, the war room became exactly that. Diesel pulled financial records in real time, narrating as he found patterns. Finch's bank account shows regular deposits of $12.47 per month starting 13 months ago. That's Social Security survivor benefits for June. But look at this. He highlighted a transaction. 18 months before that, different amount. $683 monthly for 14 months. Then it stops. Liam, War Chief said. Had to be. Lower amount suggests Liam's deceased parent had less work history. Smaller benefit. Finch collected for 14 months. Matches the timeline from placement to death. Badge wrote on the whiteboard. Victim 1, Liam Matheson, age at death, 11, time in custody, 13 months. Monthly benefit, $683, total collected, $8,879. Insurance payout, $47,000. Cause of death, bacterial meningitis, untreated ear infection. Victim 2, June Hartley, age, 7, alive. Time in custody, 13 months monthly benefit, $1,247. Total collected, $16,471. Planned insurance, $75,000. Timeline to planned, death, 8 days. Pattern, Badge said. Both children develop ear problems from accidents. Both denied medical treatment. Both have hearing deterioration. Medical neglect creates disability claim, pathway, and eventual death that looks almost natural. Insurance pays out. Rinse and repeat. Spector, former CPS investigator with 8 years of experience before he quit in disgust, added the layer that made everyone's blood run cold. I've seen this system before. Not the abuse part. The hiding part. When I worked CPS, there were county employees who'd flag certain cases. Kids with no family support. Kids whose files got shuffled to specific workers known to be overworked or incompetent. Files that would get marked low priority, then would just drift. Not officially closed, but not actively monitored. He pointed at the photograph of June tucked in Liam's file. Someone with database access could track kids across the entire system. Could see which ones were vulnerable, which ones had death benefits, or insurance potential, which ones would be missed. Could move their photos into closed files as insurance. If anyone ever questioned a placement, the county has plausible deniability. Oh, that child? She was processed, see. Here's her photo in the system. Except they're showing you a photo buried in the wrong case that nobody would ever check. Agent Chen's phone buzzed. She read the screen. Her face went pale. Initial search came back. 43 closed child death cases in Baiglar County, last 7 years. 11 of them have documents or images filed under incorrect case numbers. 6 of those 11 involved guardians who received insurance settlements exceeding $30,000. 4 of the 6 guardians had county employment or contractor relationships. She looked up. This isn't one person. This is a network. The number hit the room like a physical blow. 6 dead children. 11 if you counted the mismatched files that might reveal more victims. 4 people actively exploiting the county system for profit. And June had been number 7. Would have been, except she'd signed 3 words to a biker who understood. "Pull the names," War Chief said, voice deadly calm. "The guardians, the county workers, anyone who touched these files. Pull everything." Agent Chen was already typing. 30 seconds later, a list appeared on Diesel's laptop screen via Secure Share. Guardian payouts, last 7 years. Douglas W. Finch, $47,000. Liam Matheson, 2021. Patricia Moreland, $52,000. Twins, 2019. Robert Sanchez, $38,000. Teenage girl, 2020. Douglas W. Finch, $75,000. Pending, June Hartley, 2025. Finch did it twice, Hank said quietly. He killed Liam, got away with it, and decided to do it again. Badge circled Finch's name on the whiteboard twice. But look at the others. Moreland, Sanchez. Different people, same pattern. Someone taught them this playbook, or someone at the county level was facilitating multiple operators. Spectre pulled up county employment records. Moreland, no county connection. But Sanchez? Contract IT worker, Department of Family Services, 2018 to 2022. He had database access. Not as much as Finch, but enough. And Finch? Agent Chen asked. Records clerk, full access, 13 years employed. He could see everything, modify anything. And more importantly, Spectre highlighted a supervisor name. His boss for the last 6 years was Sandra Oaks, the name June had given, the caseworker who supposedly placed her, the woman who'd quit 18 months ago after an internal investigation. She's the coward, War Chief said. Everyone looked at him. She didn't kill anyone, but she knew. She signed off on placements she never verified. She buried complaints. And when it finally got too hot, she quit before anyone could prove what she'd enabled. Agent Chen made a note. We'll want to talk to her. Soon. No. Hank stood up. We'll talk to her. Tonight. Before she has time to lawyer up or run. You get Finch and the others on legal grounds. Sandra Oaks gets a different kind of visit. Agent Chen should have said no. Should have cited proper procedure, witness tampering laws, the dozen reasons civilians don't interrogate suspects. Instead, she looked at the whiteboard. At 6 dead children. At June's name with 8 days to planned death written next to it. 1 hour, she said. You get 1 hour to have a conversation as concerned citizens. Whatever she tells you, you document and hand over immediately. No threats, no intimidation. A conversation. Understood, Hank said. But the way he said it, the cold Marine Corps precision, made it clear Sandra Oaks was about to have the kind of conversation that ended with either full confession or full denial. And only one of those options meant she walked away, with her conscience still trying to justify what she'd done. Sandra Oaks lived in a modest ranch house on the east side of San Antonio. Manicured lawn, flower boxes under the windows, a coexist bumper sticker on her Prius. The visual markers of someone who considered themselves progressive, compassionate, on the right side of history. 4 Hells Angels motorcycles parked at the curb at 7:47 p.m. Hank knocked on the door. War Chief, Badge, and Spectre stood behind him. Not crowding, not threatening, just present. Sandra opened the door wearing yoga pants and a university sweatshirt. 52 years old, reading glasses on a chain, glass of wine in hand. She saw the vests, the patches, the men who'd clearly come with purpose. Her face went from confused to afraid in under a second. "Can I help you?" "Sandra Oaks?" Hank's voice was neutral. "Yes?" "We need to talk about Douglas Finch, and Liam Matheson, and June Hartley, and how many children you signed off on without ever actually checking if they were safe." Sandra's hand tightened on the doorframe. "I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't worked for the county in over a year." 18 months, Spector corrected. "You quit right after the internal investigation started." Behavioral Health Services flagged 17 cases where you'd signed home visit reports for addresses you never actually visited. You resigned before the investigation could conclude. But you and I both know what they would have found. Sandra tried to close the door. Badge's hand stopped it. Gently, firmly. "We're not here to hurt you," Badge said. "We're not here to threaten you. We're here to give you one chance to tell the truth before the FBI knocks on this door tomorrow with a warrant and questions you won't be able to dodge. I want a lawyer." "That's your right," Hank said. "But here's what happens next if you close this door right now. Tomorrow, the FBI arrests Douglas Finch on federal child trafficking and murder charges. They pull his entire file history. They find your signature on every placement. They find the home visit reports you filed for addresses you never checked. They talk to neighbors who'll testify you never showed up. They build a case that you enabled 6 children to die because you couldn't be bothered to do your job." He paused. "Or you can invite us inside for 5 minutes and tell us everything you know. Everything Doug told you. Everyone else involved. And maybe, when this goes to trial, the prosecutor sees cooperation instead of complicity." Sandra's hand was shaking now. The wineglass trembled. She set it down on the entry table before it spilled. "If I talk to you..." "We document it," War Chief said. "We hand it to the FBI. We don't promise you immunity or protection, but we promise you this. Whatever you tell us gets used to stop this from happening to another child. That's more than you gave Liam, more than you gave June." For 30 seconds, Sandra stood in her doorway. The comfortable life she'd built after quitting the job that had gotten too morally complicated. The retirement account, and the yoga classes, and the wine with book club, and the ability to sleep at night by telling herself she hadn't actually done anything wrong. She'd just looked away. But looking away had let children die. And 4 men in Hell's Angels vests were offering her one chance to look directly at what she'd enabled and choose differently. She stepped back, opened the door wider. 5 minutes. They sat in her living room. Spector recorded on his phone with Sandra's verbal consent. Badge took notes. Hank and War Chief just listened, their presence a reminder that this wasn't therapy or forgiveness. This was extraction of truth. "How long did you know Douglas was abusing children?" Hank asked. Sandra's voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't know he was killing them. I swear I didn't know that." "But you knew something." He'd request cases, specific types, orphans with no extended family, children with existing behavioral files that made them seem difficult. He'd say he wanted to help the hard cases, the ones nobody else would take. And I thought that was admirable. "You thought wrong," Badge said flatly. "He'd bring me coffee," Sandra continued, words coming faster now, confession spilling out like a wound draining. "We'd talk about the caseload. He'd mention a kid he'd seen flagged in the system, ask if placement had been found yet, and I'd sign off. I'd mark the home visits as completed. I'd note that the child was adjusting well. But I never actually went. Why not? I was overworked. We all were. 80 cases, 40-hour weeks, kids dying anyway, no matter how hard we tried. Doug seemed competent. He had the training. He passed all the background checks. And he made it so easy. He'd fill out half the paperwork himself, just needed my signature. I told myself I was triaging, focusing on the cases where I could make a difference. Liam Matheson died of meningitis from an untreated ear infection, Spector said. You signed a report 3 weeks before he died, saying he was healthy and well cared for. You never saw him. Sandra's face crumpled. I know. Did you take money? No, God, no, I just wanted the paperwork to stop. I wanted to go home at 5 instead of 7. I wanted to not think about all those kids. So when Doug made it easy, I let him. Who else? War Chief asked. Who else at the county was doing what you did? Sandra shook her head. I don't know names, but there were others. Doug had a system. He'd rotate between caseworkers. Never overwhelm any one person with requests. He'd bring gifts. Coffee, donuts, gift cards. Make himself helpful. Make us feel like he was doing us a favor by taking the difficult kids. She looked up, eyes red. He was a predator, but he was the kind of predator who knew how to make everyone around him complicit. And I was too tired, and too overwhelmed, and too selfish to see it. Or maybe I saw it and didn't want to believe it because that would mean I'd have to work harder. File reports, make waves, sacrifice my evenings. The room was silent, except for the sound of Spector's phone recording every word. Liam's family tried to sue the county, Sandra said quietly, after he died. They claimed negligence, failure to protect. The county settled for $47,000, paid Doug, the guardian, because he'd filed the lawsuit claiming emotional damages and lost income from caring for a special needs child who died despite his best efforts. The family got nothing. The case was sealed, and I was transferred to a different division and told not to discuss it. And you didn't, Badge said. Not a question. An accusation. I didn't. I took the transfer. I kept quiet. And 2 years later, when the internal investigation started because someone finally noticed I wasn't actually visiting homes, I quit before they could fire me, kept my pension eligibility, walked away clean. She laughed bitterly. Clean. As if retiring with full benefits while dead children stay dead is clean. Hank leaned forward. June Hartley is alive. She's 7 years old, and she's alive because she signed 3 words to a stranger who understood. But you could have saved her 13 months ago. You could have saved Liam. You could have checked, just once. You could have knocked on a door and asked to see the child alone and listened when they said they weren't safe. Sandra was crying now, full breakdown, shoulders shaking. I know, I live with it every day. I tell myself I didn't know, but I knew enough. I knew something was wrong and I chose paperwork over children. I chose easy over right. War Chief stood. The conversation was over. Tomorrow, FBI Special Agent Victoria Chen is going to contact you. You're going to tell her everything you just told us. Every name you remember. Every case Doug requested. Every signature you forged. And you're going to testify, in front of a judge, with reporters in the room, about how the Bazar County foster system enabled child predators because caseworkers like you couldn't be bothered to do your job. Sandra nodded, face in her hands. I will. I'll tell them everything. At the door, Hank turned back. June's going to survive this. She's going to grow up and maybe become a social worker or a therapist or someone who actually protects kids. And when she does, it won't be because of the system you worked for. It'll be in spite of it. They left Sandra Oaks sitting in her living room, surrounded by the comfortable life she'd built on the graves of children she'd never checked on. Outside, under the Texas stars, Badge checked his phone. Recording's uploaded to Chen. She'll have it in 3 minutes. Good. Hank mounted his bike. Let's get back to the clubhouse. I want to be there when June wakes up tomorrow. Promised her I wouldn't leave until she felt safe. The engine started. 4 Harleys pulling away from a suburban house where a woman was finally, 13 months too late, facing what she'd enabled. But the night wasn't over, because when Agent Chen received that recording at 8:23 p.m., she immediately made 3 phone calls. By 9:15 p.m., FBI field teams were knocking on doors across San Antonio. Doors belonging to Patricia Moreland and Robert Sanchez. Doors belonging to 3 other county workers Sandra had named in her confession. Doors belonging to people who'd built comfortable lives on insurance payouts and survivor benefits, while children died quietly in apartments and basements and locked rooms. By morning, the FBI would hold 8 people in custody. By the end of the week, the total count would reach 11. Caseworkers, contractors, administrators who'd signed off on placements they never verified, who'd buried complaints, who'd taken the easy path while children suffered. The scope was staggering. 11 accomplices, 6 confirmed dead children over 7 years. 4 more suspected cases still under investigation. $287,000 in fraudulent insurance payouts. $64,000 in stolen survivor benefits. 19 forged guardianship documents. 47 falsified home visit reports. And at the center of it all, Douglas Wendell Finch, county records clerk, volunteer, good neighbor, the helpful man who brought coffee and made paperwork easy, the man who'd systematically selected, abused, and killed vulnerable children for profit, while an overwhelmed system looked the other way. But he'd made one fatal mistake. He'd hurt a child who knew sign language, and she'd signed to the one man in a Buc-ee's parking lot who would understand. 3 words that dismantled an empire of abuse. Help. He's not my dad. University Hospital San Antonio, Pediatric Wing. Sunday morning, 9:47 a.m. Stitch sat in the waiting room with a paper bag on his lap. Inside, a sleeve of graham crackers, a juice box, and a small stuffed dog identical to the one Patricia from CPS had given June the day before. He'd stopped at 3 stores before finding the right one. Same golden retriever, same soft fur. Because he'd seen how tightly June had clutched the first one, and he knew from 8 years patching up wounded soldiers that sometimes having 2 of something made it feel more permanent, less like it could be taken away. The examination room door opened. Dr. Sarah Martinez, 43, pediatric specialist with certification in child abuse medical evaluation, stepped out. She saw Stitch and offered a tired smile. The biker who called in the medical documentation yesterday. Yes, ma'am. Stitch stood. How is she? Dr. Martinez glanced back at the closed door. Through the small window, June was visible sitting on the exam table. Yellow windbreaker still on, despite the warm hospital. Hood down for the first time. Hank sat beside her, signing something that made her almost smile. Severely malnourished, Dr. Martinez said quietly. BMI 15.7 when it should be minimum 17. That's clinical malnutrition. Her body's been cannibalizing muscle tissue for months. We're starting refeeding protocol. Small meals every 3 hours, monitored closely to prevent refeeding syndrome. She pulled out a tablet, showed Stitch the medical imaging. The hearing loss is worse than we thought. Her left ear has 82% loss. Inner ear damage consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. The infection you documented has spread to the mastoid bone. If we'd waited another week, maybe 10 days, she would have developed meningitis. Same thing that killed Liam Matheson. Stitch's jaw clenched. Can you save the hearing? Maybe 40% of what's left. We're starting antibiotics now. IV for the first 72 hours. Surgery in 2 weeks to repair structural damage. Then hearing aid evaluation. But the timeline matters here. Another month in his custody. She'd be permanently, completely deaf. And probably dead. Dr. Martinez looked at Stitch directly. Thank you for getting her here when you did, for documenting everything the way you did. The photographs you took yesterday are already part of the evidence chain. The police were here this morning. I gave them copies of everything. 47 documented injuries, ranging from fresh to months old. Rope burns, cigarette burns, impact bruising, evidence of restraint trauma. This child was being systematically destroyed. She paused. Who are you people? Really? Stitch smiled slightly. We're the people who show up when the system's too slow. And we're the people who stick around after, to make sure kids like June don't fall through the cracks twice. He held up the paper bag. Can I give her this? I know she can't eat much yet, but the crackers are on the approved list you sent to Agent Chen, and the stuffed dog is just... So she has a backup, in case something happens to the first one. Dr. Martinez's expression softened completely. Room 3. She's been asking about you. Well, signing about you. Asking if the medical helper man was still here. Inside the examination room, June sat very still while a nurse checked her IV line. The fluid drip was delivering antibiotics and nutrients, controlled amounts to avoid shocking her starved system. She'd been given 3 crackers an hour ago and nearly cried because they tasted like food instead of fear. Hank had stayed through the entire examination, held her hand during the painful parts, signed explanations when the medical terms got too complicated, when the doctor had to document injuries on her back, scars from being hit with a belt. Hank had turned away to give her privacy, but kept signing. You're safe. This is healing. They're helping. Now, Stitch knocked gently and entered. June's face lit up. Small smile, genuine, the first real one Hank had seen. Medical helper man, she said out loud, words slightly slurred but clearer after a night of rest. That's me. Stitch set the bag on the counter. I brought you something. 2 things, actually. He pulled out the stuffed dog. June's eyes went wide. That's the same. Exactly the same. So now you have 2. One for sleeping, one for carrying around during the day, or both for sleeping if you want. Whatever feels safe. June took the second dog carefully, held both of them, one in each hand, like bookends protecting her heart. Stitch pulled out the crackers and juice box. Doctor says you can have 4 crackers now, and juice, real food, June, as much as your body can handle, as often as you need it. Nobody's going to take it away. Nobody's going to punish you for being hungry. You're allowed to eat. June stared at the crackers, then at Stitch, then at Hank. Really? Really, Hank said. He signed. Food is yours now, forever. She ate 3 crackers slowly, drank half the juice box. Her hands were shaking, not from fear this time, but from the simple, overwhelming reality that food was happening without conditions, without consequences, without waiting for permission. When she finished, she looked at Stitch. Are you coming back? Every day you're here, Stitch promised. I'm assigned to your case as medical liaison. That means I coordinate between doctors, the FBI, the lawyers, and you. Make sure nobody talks over your head or makes decisions without explaining them first. And, he smiled, I bring snacks. June clutched both stuffed dogs. Thank you. 2 words, but they carried 13 months of being unheard, unseen, dismissed. 2 words that meant someone had finally answered when she cried for help. The housing solution came together by Sunday evening. War Chief made 3 calls from the clubhouse. The first was to a brother named Cisco, 56, owned a duplex on the west side, kept 1 unit open for family emergencies. The second was to the club's treasury account. $42,000 raised over 7 annual toy drives, earmarked for helping vulnerable kids. The third was to Patricia at CPS, confirming that emergency foster placement had been approved for a family vetted by both the county and the FBI. By 6 p.m., The duplex at 4782 Wildflower Lane was ready. 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, fenced backyard. Fresh paint, new furniture donated by 3 different brothers. Groceries in the fridge, child-safe foods, small portions. The refeeding protocol list taped to the inside cabinet. A bedroom set up specifically for June. Soft bed with nightlight. Curtains she could open or close, books on a shelf, and a small desk by the window. The yellow windbreaker, washed but not thrown away, hung on a hook inside her closet. June had asked to keep it, not to wear, just to have. A reminder that the bright color had made her visible when she needed to be seen. Foster family, Tom and Linda Reyes. Early 60s, retired teachers, fostered 17 children over 20 years. 3 adoptions. 0 complaints. Certified in trauma-informed care. Linda had gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, and eyes that had seen broken children before, and knew how to hold space for healing without rushing it. Tom was quiet, steady, the kind of man who fixed things with his hands, and spoke in full sentences only when words mattered. They met June at the hospital Monday afternoon. Linda knelt down, slowly, giving June time to adjust. "Hi, June. My name is Linda. This is Tom. We'd like you to stay with us for a while, in a house where you have your own room and nobody hurts you. Would that be okay?" June looked at Hank. He signed, "They're safe." "I checked them. I'll visit every week." "Can I bring my dogs?" June whispered. "Of course," Linda said. "And anything else you want to bring. This is about what makes you feel safe." June held both stuffed animals tighter. "Okay." The first meal in the Reyes house happened Tuesday night. Tom made spaghetti. Simple, plain, small portions. The dining table sat 4, but only 3 chairs were occupied. June had asked if she could eat in the living room on the couch at first, where she could see the door and the windows. Linda said yes, without hesitation. June sat on the couch with a plate on her lap, one stuffed dog beside her, the other on the arm of the couch. The spaghetti was warm. There was garlic bread, soft, buttered, not burned. A glass of milk, not water. A napkin that didn't have to be rationed. And nobody took it away. Nobody timed how long she took to eat. Nobody counted bites. Nobody said she'd had enough. Nobody punished her for chewing slowly, because her jaw still hurt from the time Doug had slapped her for talking back. Linda sat in the armchair across the room, reading a book, not hovering, not watching, just present, available if June needed something, invisible if she didn't. Tom washed dishes in the kitchen. The sound of running water, normal domestic sounds, the absence of yelling. June ate 4 bites of spaghetti, 3 bites of bread, drank half the milk, then she set the plate on the coffee table and cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears running down her face while she held a stuffed dog and processed the reality that this, food, warmth, safety, choice, was real. Linda looked up from her book, didn't move from the chair. "It's okay to cry, sweetheart. This is a lot to feel all at once." June nodded, wiped her face. "I'm not used to keeping food." "Well," Linda said gently, "you're going to have to get used to it. Because that plate is yours until you're done with it. 5 minutes from now, 5 hours from now, whenever you're ready." June looked at the plate, at the food still on it, at the glass of milk. Really? Really? She ate 2 more bites, drank the rest of the milk, and for the first time in 13 months, June Marigold Hartley went to sleep on a full stomach in a soft bed, with a nightlight glowing and the door to her room open exactly as wide as she wanted it. Wednesday afternoon, 4 Hells Angels brothers came to say goodbye. Not permanent goodbye. The kind of goodbye that meant, we're going back to our lives, but you can call any time. They gathered in the Reyes' backyard. June sat on the porch steps with both stuffed dogs. Yellow Windbreaker folded beside her. Diesel knelt first. 37 years old, tattooed arms, phone perpetually in hand. June, I'm putting my number in your foster mom's phone. Anytime, and I mean anytime, you need to talk to someone who gets it. You call. Text, voice, video. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. and you can't sleep. You call. He handed her a small card with a QR code. This links to a private folder with all the evidence we gathered. Photos, documents, everything. It's yours. When you're older, if you want to see it, it's there. If you never want to look, that's okay too. But it exists. Your story is documented. Nobody can erase it. June took the card carefully. Badge was next. 54. Former cop. The lines on his face from seeing too much and staying anyway. The charges against Doug are federal now. Child trafficking, fraud, murder. He's looking at 8 consecutive life sentences. He'll never be free again. The trial's going to be public. A lot of people will hear what happened to you. You don't have to testify if you don't want to. But if you do, I'll be there. Front row. Every day. Will he see me? June's voice was small. He'll be behind a screen. You'll never have to look at him directly. And Agent Chen is arranging for you to give testimony via video, if that's easier. You're in control, June. Not him. Not anymore. Spector, former CPS investigator, crouched beside the porch. I'm working with the county now as a consultant, helping them rebuild the foster system so this doesn't happen again. Every caseworker is being retrained. Every placement is being audited. And there's a new protocol. Mandatory in-person visits every 30 days, with the child interviewed alone. It's called June's Law. Her eyes went wide. My name? Your name. Because you survived when the system failed. And now the system is changing because of you. Finally, Gravel, 63, chapter founder, the elder statesman who'd seen 4 decades of broken people and never stopped believing they could heal. He sat on the step beside June. Didn't say anything at first, just sat. Then quietly, when I started this chapter 41 years ago, I did it because I'd seen too many people fall through the cracks. People the world overlooked because they looked wrong or sounded wrong or came from the wrong place. We made a promise. The angels protect people who can't protect themselves. Yesterday, you became part of that promise. He pulled out a small leather bracelet, hand-tooled, simple, with a silver charm in the shape of wings. This is a junior member bracelet. We make them for kids in the community who've shown courage. You're 7 years old, and you signed for help when you could have stayed silent. That's courage, June. Real courage. And as long as you wear this, every angel in Texas knows your family. He slipped it onto her wrist. It fit perfectly, sized for a child's hand. June stared at it, touched the wings. I'm family? Your family, all 4 men said in unison. They left in formation, 4 bikes pulling away from Wildflower Lane, engines rumbling that distinctive Harley sound that June would forever associate with safety. Linda stood on the porch beside her. Those are good men, Linda said. They saved me, June whispered. They did. And now it's our job to help you figure out what comes next. June looked at the bracelet on her wrist. The yellow Windbreaker folded beside her. The 2 stuffed dogs she'd probably sleep with for years. What does come next? Linda smiled. Whatever you want, sweetheart. School, maybe. Friends. Healing. Learning to be a kid again. And we'll be here every step of the way. 3 weeks later, June walked into an elementary school for the first time in 13 months. Wilson Elementary, 2nd grade, trauma-informed classroom with a teacher who'd been briefed on June's case and knew not to ask about the yellow bracelet or why she sometimes froze when people touched her shoulder unexpectedly. Hank drove her that first morning. pulled up in his truck. Not the motorcycle, too intimidating for a school zone, with June in the passenger seat wearing new clothes Linda had bought and the leather bracelet she refused to take off. "You ready?" Hank signed. June shook her head. "I'm scared." "That's okay. Scared is normal. But here's what I know about you, June Marigold Hartley. You walked up to a stranger in a parking lot and signed 3 words that saved your life. If you can do that, you can walk into a classroom." She looked at the school building, at the other kids heading inside with backpacks and lunch boxes, and the careless confidence of children who'd never had to count prime numbers to stay sane. "Will you pick me up after?" "Linda's picking you up, but I'll be at the house by 4. We're having dinner together. Tom's making tacos, and I'll want to hear about everything. Every single detail." June unbuckled her seatbelt, touched the wings on her bracelet one more time. Then she opened the truck door and walked into Wilson Elementary. Hank watched until she disappeared inside. Then he pulled out his phone and sent a text to War Chief. "She's in. First day of school. She's going to be okay." The response came back immediately. She was always going to be okay. She's an angel now. 2 weeks after June started school, Hank drove past the Reyes house without planning to stop. He'd told himself it was just a route back from a job in Austin. Told himself he wasn't checking on her. But when he saw the backyard through the fence, saw June and another little girl tossing a ball, saw June laugh, actually laugh, the sound carrying over the evening air, he pulled over. He didn't get out of the truck, just watched for maybe 90 seconds. The other girl was wearing a hearing aid, June's new friend from school, another second grader with partial hearing loss who knew some basic sign language. They weren't signing now. They were just playing. Normal, safe. The yellow windbreaker hung on the fence post. Forgotten in the warm October afternoon, June dove for the ball, missed, landed in the grass, and instead of freezing or flinching or calculating whether that would count as making noise, she just laughed harder. The kind of deep belly laugh children are supposed to make when nothing hurts, and everything is possible. Hank's chest tightened. He thought of Marcus, of the little brother who'd never gotten to this side of healing, who'd fought the silence for 41 years and lost. He thought of June signing help in a Bookie's parking lot, of her small hands forming words nobody else would have understood. And he thought about the 17 other children he'd never known about, the ones in the files, the ones whose cases were still being investigated, the ones who might still be in danger because systems moved slowly and predators moved fast. He pulled his phone from his pocket, scrolled to the photo Diesel had sent yesterday. June at school, reading in the library, surrounded by books and safety and possibility. He saved the photo. Didn't share it, just kept it. Then he drove to Sunset Memorial Cemetery where Marcus was buried, parked near the familiar headstone, walked over and knelt on grass that had grown thick over 7 years of grief. He signed to the gravestone, the way he'd done every Sunday for 7 years. "I saved one this time, 7 years old. She signed to me, just like you taught me." The wind picked up, rustled the oak trees, carried no answers because Marcus was gone and the dead don't speak. But Hank felt something settle in his chest anyway. Not peace, not closure, just the quiet understanding that maybe, learning ASL for Marcus 30 years ago had been preparation for this, for June, for the moment when one child's desperate signs would be the only language that could save her. He stood, touched the headstone. "I'll keep looking," he said out loud. "For the others, the ones still hiding. I'll keep listening." He walked back to his truck, didn't look back. The bracelet on June's wrist had his chapter's wings on it. She was protected now, and that was enough. 18 months after the Bookie's parking lot, June stood in the University Hospital San Antonio lobby with a poster board under her arm and her heart hammering in her chest. She was 9 now, taller, healthier, 49 pounds instead of 42. Hearing aid in her left ear, pulling back some of what had been lost. Not all of it, never all of it, but enough that she could hear her teacher and her friends and the world that had been fading to silence. The poster board was for the county-wide Child Safety Awareness Fair. Schools had been invited to create presentations about safety resources. June's teacher had suggested it. Linda and Tom had helped her design it. But the words were June's. What to do if someone is hurting you. Tell a trusted adult. If they don't listen, tell another one. You are allowed to say no to adults who make you uncomfortable. Your body is yours. Nobody has the right to hurt you. If you're scared, find someone safe. Teacher, librarian, police, or someone wearing this patch. Photo of Hell's Angels wings. At the bottom, in June's careful handwriting, I was hurt for 13 months before someone listened. You don't have to wait that long. Ask for help. Keep asking until someone hears you. She'd signed it. June H., age 9, survivor. Now she stood in the hospital lobby where 73 presentations were displayed. Teachers circulating, parents reading, county officials taking notes. And June waited. A woman approached her display, late 30s, tired eyes, holding the hand of a boy, maybe 6 years old, who had bruises on his arm in the distinctive pattern of finger grip marks. The woman read June's poster, read it twice, then looked at June. You wrote this? Yes, ma'am. You were hurt? For 13 months? June nodded. By a man who said he was taking care of me. But he wasn't. He was stealing from me and hurting me, and nobody believed me when I tried to tell them. The boy tugged his mother's hand, whispered something June couldn't hear. The mother's face changed, crumpled. She knelt down to her son's level. Baby, is someone hurting you? The boy nodded, started crying. And right there in the hospital lobby, in front of June's poster, a 6-year-old boy told his mother about the babysitter who'd been hitting him when Mom was at work, about the bruises he'd been hiding, about the threats that if he told, worse would happen. June watched as the mother pulled out her phone with shaking hands, called someone. Her voice was urgent, breaking, but determined as, I need to report abuse. My son just told me. I need help, now. Hospital security approached. A social worker materialized. The county officials running the fair converged. And June stood beside her poster board, the one with her story in her own handwriting, and watched as her words helped another child find the courage to speak. The mother looked at June before she was led away with her son. Thank you, she mouthed. June signed back. You listened. That's everything. That night, Linda found June sitting on the back porch with both stuffed dogs. You okay, sweetheart? I helped someone today, June said quietly. A little boy. He told his mom because he read my poster. Linda sighed her. I'm so proud of you. I was scared to make the poster, scared people would know it was about me. But then I thought, if I'd seen a poster like that when I was with Doug, maybe I would have known it was okay to keep asking for help. Maybe I wouldn't have given up after 3 people didn't believe me. She looked at Linda. I don't want other kids to give up. Linda pulled June close. June didn't flinch anymore when Linda hugged her. It had taken months, but touch didn't mean pain now. It meant safety. You know what the county is doing? Linda said. Because of your poster. What? They're printing 5,000 copies, putting them in every school, every library, every pediatrician's office in Bayard County. Your words, June. Teaching kids that they matter and adults should listen. June's eyes went wide. 5,000? 5,000. And they're calling the program Angel's Watch, named after the people who saved you. The data came in 3 months later. Angel's Watch program results, first quarter. Posters distributed, 5,000 across Bayard County. Calls to child abuse. Hotline, up 34%, confirmed abuse voices identified. 23 to children removed from dangerous situations. 19 pending investigations opened. 11. And in June's file, a note from the program coordinator. Since Angels Watch launch, average time between abuse beginning and report being filed has dropped from 8.3 months to 2.1 months. Children are learning faster that they're allowed to ask for help. This program, this little girl's courage, is saving lives. Layer 3. The Full Circle. 7 years after the Book E's parking lot. June was 14, high school freshman, honors student, volunteer at the University Hospital Pediatric Wing on weekends. She stood in the volunteer coordinator's office on a Saturday morning in March, reading a case file she shouldn't technically have access to, but that the coordinator had quietly left on the desk where June would see it. Case number 2847, female, age 8, found abandoned at gas station, nonverbal, severe malnutrition, signs of long-term neglect and abuse. June knew that look. The hollow eyes in the photograph, the way the girl's shoulders hunched forward. The yellow jacket, different color, blue this time, but the same too large protective shell. She knew because she'd been that girl once. "Can I meet her?" June asked. The coordinator, Patricia, the same woman who'd given June her first stuffed dog 7 years ago and who'd never left this work despite how hard it was, nodded slowly. "She won't talk. Hasn't said a word since they found her. CPS is trying to place her, but she's fought off 3 foster families already. Bites, scratches, runs. They're running out of options." "What's her name?" "Aria. Aria Mitchell." June took the file. "Can you give me 10 minutes with her? Just me. No adults in the room. 10 minutes." Patricia should have said no. Should have cited protocols and liability and a dozen reasons why a teenage volunteer shouldn't be alone with a traumatized child. Instead, she looked at June, at the girl who'd survived and healed and grown into someone who knew exactly what Aria needed because she'd needed it herself once. "Room 4B. I'll be right outside." Aria Mitchell sat in the corner of the hospital playroom, wedged between a bookshelf and the wall. 8 years old, 31 pounds, hair matted, eyes that tracked every movement like a cornered animal. June entered slowly. Sat down on the floor across the room, far enough to not be threatening, close enough to be seen. She didn't speak at first, just pulled out a small box from her backpack. Inside, 2 stuffed dogs, golden retrievers, soft and worn from 7 years of being held. "These are mine," June said quietly. "Someone gave them to me when I was 7. I'd just been rescued from a man who'd hurt me for a long time. I didn't trust anyone, didn't talk, couldn't believe the food and the safety were real." Aria's eyes flicked to the stuffed dogs, didn't move otherwise. "The man who hurt me told me nobody would believe me if I told. And he was right for a long time. I tried to tell 4 different adults, and they all looked away. So I stopped trying. I just survived, counted prime numbers in my head, walked quietly, hoped someday it would stop." June pushed one of the stuffed dogs slowly across the floor toward Aria. Not all the way, just halfway. "Then one day I was at a gas station, and I saw a man with a tattoo that meant he understood sign language. And even though I was terrified, even though every adult had failed me before, I signed 3 words. Help. He's not my dad." Aria's eyes widened slightly. "That man called 280 bikers to that gas station. They surrounded me, and the man who'd hurt me. and for the first time in 13 months, I was safe. June met Arya's eyes directly. I know you don't trust anyone. I know you think if you talk, it'll get worse. I know you're waiting for this to end, for someone to hurt you again, because that's all you've known. She stood slowly, picked up her backpack. I'm going to leave now, but I'm leaving one of my dogs here with you. His name is Max. I've had him for 7 years, and he's kept me safe through nightmares and hard days and moments when I didn't think I could do this. And I'm giving him to you because I want you to know something. June's voice was steady, but her eyes were full. You're not alone. The adults in this hospital are going to keep you safe. They're going to feed you, and heal you, and not hurt you. And it's going to feel impossible to believe that at first. But it's true. And Max will be there to remind you until you're ready to believe it yourself. She walked to the door, hand on the handle. Behind her, a small voice, hoarse from disuse. Wait! June turned. Arya had crawled forward, had taken the stuffed dog, was holding it against her chest. The man who saved you, Arya whispered. Does he save other kids? June's heart broke and healed in the same moment. He saves every kid who asks, and so do I now. She knelt down, extended her hand. My name is June. I'm 14. I survived what you're surviving, and I'm going to help make sure you don't have to fight alone anymore. Arya stared at June's hand for 10 seconds. Then she reached out, small fingers, trembling, closing around June's palm. I'm scared, Arya whispered. I know, June said. I was scared too, but it gets better. I promise. Outside room 4B, Patricia wiped tears from her face as she listened through the door. This was why she'd stayed in this work for 7 years since the Buc-ee's parking lot. For moments like this, when one saved child reached back and pulled another one forward. When the cycle of trauma became a cycle of healing instead. Hank Patterson stood at Marcus's grave on a Sunday morning in October, 7 years and 8 months after a little girl in a yellow jacket had signed 3 words that changed everything. He was 59 now, gray beard more white than salt and pepper. The prosthetic hand had been upgraded twice, better technology, smoother function, but he still wore the fingerless glove on his right hand and kept the left mechanical and visible. Because June had once told him, 3 years after the Buc-ee's parking lot, that seeing his prosthetic hand had been part of why she'd approached him. He looked different, looked like someone who understood not being whole, looked like someone who'd survived something and kept going. He signed to the headstone. June is 14 now, volunteer at the hospital, helping other kids. She saved one yesterday. The wind rustled oak leaves. October in Texas, the air finally cool enough to breathe. Hank pulled out his phone. The folder labeled Why We Ride had 63 photos now. Children helped over 7 years. Some saved from gas stations, some from schools, some from situations the police called unwinnable, until the angels showed up and proved otherwise. June's photo from yesterday was the newest addition, taken by Patricia and sent to Hank with a simple message. She's becoming who she needed when she was 7. Hank had learned something in the 7 years since Marcus died and June lived. The grief didn't go away. It shifted, changed shape, became something he carried differently. Marcus had needed help Hank couldn't give, couldn't see in time, couldn't stop, couldn't fix. That guilt was permanent, would be permanent until Hank's own headstone went into the ground next to this one. But June had needed help, Hank could give, and 17 other kids since then had needed help the chapter could give. And Arya yesterday had needed help that June, the girl who survived, could give. Maybe that was the point. Maybe learning ASL for Marcus 30 years ago wasn't about saving his brother. Maybe it was about preparing Hank to hear the children who would come later, whose signs would mean the difference between death and survival. Maybe Marcus's legacy wasn't just grief. Maybe it was June, and Aria, and every child who got to grow up because Hank had spent 3 decades learning a language most people ignored. He stood, touched the headstone one last time. "I'm listening," he said out loud. "For all of them. For you." He walked back to his Road King. The sergeant-at-arms rocker was back on his vest. June had returned it on her 10th birthday, said she didn't need it anymore because she knew she was protected. But she'd kept the junior member bracelet, wore it every day. Hank mounted the bike, started the engine. Somewhere in San Antonio, June was probably sitting with Aria in room 4B, teaching an 8-year-old girl that safety was possible and adults could be trusted, and the hunger would end. Somewhere in Texas, another child was learning that the scariest-looking person in a room might be exactly who they needed. And Hank Patterson, former Marine, Hell's Angels sergeant-at-arms, the man who'd lost his brother but saved someone else's daughter, rode toward home, knowing that the fight never ended, but the victories were worth counting. Closing narrator address. This story isn't really about bikers or patches or motorcycles rumbling into parking lots. It's about a 7-year-old girl who had every reason to give up, who'd tried to tell the truth 4 times and been dismissed every time, choosing to try one more time, choosing to see a stranger with a tattoo and bet her life that he'd understand. It's about a man who learned sign language for a brother he couldn't save, carrying that grief for 30 years, not knowing it was preparation for the moment when one child's silent scream would be the only language that mattered. It's about 280 men who could have chosen violence but chose discipline instead, who understood that real strength isn't about breaking things. It's about building unbreakable evidence chains and surrounding victims with witnesses and forcing systems to do their jobs. There are Junists everywhere. Children falling through cracks that shouldn't exist. Children being hurt by people who look normal and sound trustworthy and have access to systems designed to protect. And there are Hanks everywhere. People carrying loss, carrying skills learned for someone they couldn't save, not knowing those skills will save someone else. You don't need a Hell's Angels vest to be a protector. You don't need a motorcycle or a chapter or 200 brothers. You just need to be the person who doesn't look away. Pay attention. Listen when a child hesitates before answering, "I'm fine." Notice the too large jacket, hiding bruises. Ask the uncomfortable questions. Make the phone call. Stand in the gap between a victim and the system moving too slowly to save them. Because here's what June proved that March afternoon at Buc-ee's. Sometimes the most invisible person in a crowded parking lot holds the key to unraveling an entire network of evil. Sometimes a 7-year-old girl's 3 signed words can mobilize an army. Sometimes asking for help one more time, when every previous time failed, is the difference between death in 8 days and survival for 80 years. If this story moved you, subscribe to Gentle Biker Official and share it with someone who needs to remember that real heroes still exist. Drop a comment telling us, who was your protector when you needed one? Or who did you protect when the system failed? Let us know you stand with June, with Aria, with every person who refuses to stay silent when they see wrong. Because this world needs more Little Hawks and more Ironsides, and more people who understand that sometimes justice doesn't carry a badge. Sometimes it carries a stuffed dog, and the truth nobody wanted to hear. The sun set over San Antonio on a warm October evening, turning the sky orange and pink. In a hospital room at University Medical, June sat with Aria, teaching her to sign safe and home and protected. At the Reyes house, Linda set an extra place at the dinner table because June was bringing someone new tomorrow, a girl who needed to see what safety looked like before she could believe it was real. At Sunset Memorial Cemetery, oak trees rustled over a headstone that read, Marcus James Patterson, 1978 to 2019. Heard by heaven, remembered on earth. And on Interstate 10, a Hells Angels biker named Ironside rode toward home, prosthetic hand steady on the handlebars, knowing that somewhere in Texas, another child might be signing for help. And when they did, someone would be listening. Because June Marigold Hartley had signed 3 words to a stranger in a parking lot 7 years ago. And those 3 words, help, he's not, my dad, had become a promise that the angels would keep forever. Nobody hurts our children. Not while we're still riding.